to the October 22nd workshop meeting of the Lockport Groves County Council. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Browning,
Here.
Vice Mayor Darrell,
Here.
Councilman Wilson A.
Here.
And let the record show that Councilman Ryan Yang and Councilman Jim Rocket are absent.
Okay, we would stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we ask again for wisdom and guidance as we represent the residents and landowners of Lockport Groves. Make the meeting civil, and we pray for those that are serving our country overseas. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
And there's Jim. Let the record show that Jim is present. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, motion by Ron, second by Tom. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. Moving to the workshop. Item 1, proposed legislation regarding roadways. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. The genesis for this agenda item came via the September 27th IGC committee meeting. It was attended by Mr. Joey and myself and staff, and then Supervisor John Ryan from the Board of Supervisors and Councilman Golson, they represented the town council. At that time, Mr. Ryan had indicated, Supervisor Ryan had indicated that it would be probably timely to discuss the legislation related to roadways in the town. Councilman Golson and the rest of the committee agreed. However, at this point in time, one of the issues is we still don't have any legislation to actually look at. So this might be a little bit premature, as well as the fact that the board did discuss it at their last meeting last Monday. However, tonight, as you know, a couple members are either ill or out of town, and so Mr. Shiola and Mr. Ryan will be participating. But I'm just not sure unless somebody has a good reason why we need to go forward at this time, because we simply don't have the proposed act in front of us. There is an issue relative to having a lobbyist and having the town participate in the payment of that. And again, if you so desire, we can discuss that, but you don't know, considering the fact that we're not discussing legislation, a game plan at this point, whether it's appropriate for us to discuss it tonight. So I'm turning it back to you, and you can decide whether you want to go there, or if you do, then we can address it.
All right. I mean, my thought is, we set up this meeting to discuss this stuff, and that's what we were going to do. So, all right.
Doesn't seem like we're ready to discuss it. We don't have the backup,
Sure doesn't sound like it.
And in the interest of time, I really don't think we have the time to sit here and hash it all out if we don't even have a work product to look at. If we had something to read from and say yes and no, that's not good.
Ron?
Just a question. I don't know why we couldn't talk about the lobbyists. I know we needed a lobbyist when we took it forth through the district with the roads that we owed them. It seemed like we could come up with an answer whether we want a lobbyist, how much we want to spend on one. John's got some background on the lobbyists, and as far as the legislation, I was thinking we would use the same legislation we used before. I didn't know we were going to change the game plan. Maybe John could help us out on that. But no, we came here to discuss it. If we can settle it tonight, then because we do need to move on legislation. Each month that we wait, it's going to get harder and harder to pass. So no, we need to discuss something and take care of parts of it. We can't take care of all of it.
Okay, Jim?
No, I was at the meeting, and I'm sure John can comment and Steve, I'd like to take advantage of them being here and giving us their input. What I came away with was that the board was interested in legal teams working out, basically working together and bringing it to each respective council or board, the results of that work. And then we would then discuss it at that point, but they would do pretty much all the work. And they felt comfortable that progress could be made through the legal staff. I think we should have some input tonight as a council as to what we're looking for and give our, if anything, we can give some guidance to the legal staff as they move forward. As I understood it, looking at the legal.
Okay, what is the procedure that we need to establish that we're gonna go through? What's the first thing that needs to happen?
Well, I think, number one, I think the district is, their attorney is working on the legislative act.
Okay.
And we should be seeing it shortly. I guess the big question is, number one, our concurrence in working with them on the language of the act, and if town council wants to participate in the funding of the lobbies.
Okay, John, you want to speak, and then we'll get back to you.
John Ryan, 35 Boyd Road. Yeah, I had made the comment at the IGC meeting with Tom, thinking that the local delegation was going to be meeting in November, like they did the year that we did the local bill. It turns out they're going to be meeting around the middle of December. So that kind of changed the immediacy as far as the attorneys working with each other on the bill. Essentially, it's going to be the same bill seeking the district public road impact consistent with Florida Statute 95-361, but stated as a perfected easement on the remaining district roads. And it's also going to be considering that the stated policy and actions of the district to turn over resurfaced road segments to the town of Waxahachie Grove via quitclaim deeds as soon as resurfacing improvements are completed. Last time we filed the local bill as the district with a resolution of support from the town. We also incorporated some changes in the original draft that were coordinated through the League of Cities. I think that the district's policy of turning the resurfaced roads over to the town immediately when that's completed is consistent with the concerns that the League of Cities had. I don't see that the wording of the bill would be that complicated, but I think what happened was that we were thinking that official action should be based on having, an actual draft of the bill that was coordinated with both the town attorney and the district attorney. And the district has already approved retaining David Lamba, who was he's actually, his past was he was a lawyer with Lewis Longman, and he's a lobbyist in Tallahassee that does a lot of work with special districts, and he was very effective in terms of communicating the details and impacts of the bill, both with the local delegation and with the legislative committees in Tallahassee. So I think that what happened was that the attorneys, with other distractions, didn't get a circulated draft of the bill in time for the workshop discussions tonight. But I think with the description, I've given you, it's a pretty simple bill. It's dedicating the width of the remaining district roads within the town. And it's dedicating the width of the roads to the extent that they've been constructed and maintained and repaired continuously and uninterruptedly by the district for 7 years, and shall be dedicated through easement rights to the public pursuant to this act. It's not a title taking, it's recognizing the roads where they are, and that it's basically just perfecting an easement so that the improvements that the town is undertaking with regard to collecting canal and that the developers are undertaking with respect to the South B Road, and that the remaining Ocean roads are going to be quit claim to the town, that this just clears up any easement issues or dimensions of the road width for the gaps on North Road and F Road north and south, including the work that's been recently done by the medical complex. So what it does is just, in one bill, it confirms the public road status of all the remaining district roads and sets them up to be turned over to the town as resurfacing improvements are made.
Okay, thank you, John.
I'm glad to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for John?
Certainly, the first question would be, resurfacing improvements is an acronym for OJIM, or are you referring to some other type of improvement?
Well, the developers are going to be using paving standards from Southern Boulevard to the, I guess it's the access to the college, and then OJIM from there over the bridge, the new bridge at Collecting Canal, and then the remaining parts of South B Road. The road gaps on North Road are basically OJIM. And the work that was done by the county on North Ave and South Ave is the county. And the OJIM improvements that are being done by the medical plaza are going to be OJIM. So it'll be a combination. One of the main differences is that on any of the new road segments, the town has the design and spacing responsibility for any speed humps. And the original local bill that was done in 2011 made it clear that as far as the district is concerned, the town, just like the county, has the exclusive responsibility for traffic control and safety and enforcement.
That's part of the answer. So if a road is not improved, then the district is going to have it until when?
Until some additional action is taken to turn the road segments over to the town. That'll be up to the town council and board to consider with respect to dirt road maintenance as opposed to a much lesser degree of maintenance regarding the OJIM roads. And the town's decision as to how it wants to work with either town employees or district employees or other contractors with regard to the remaining dirt roads.
But the bill will not require that the road be OJIM to be turned over to the town. It will allow it to be turned over to the town if it's not OJIM, if that's the town.
Yeah, it'll just restate, it'll restate the policy that as soon as segments of the roads are improved with OJIM or pavement, when that work is completed, that will, then they will be quit claimed over to the town. And what this is doing, it's just
But John,
simplifying the process.
I understand that, and not to be rude, but the question is, if a road segment is not OJIM, will it remain in district control, or will it be turned over to the town council?
It'll remain in the district's control until the town council decides what it wants to do with contractors or employees in the future.
Okay. Would the local bill prohibit the town council from making that decision? Or
No,
would the town council have that?
that's up to the town.
Okay, it's just the way you would put it before. It seemed to me that in order for it to be turned over to the town, it would require that it be OJIM first or paid, and that's not the case.
What it does, it recognizes that only the district right now has a policy in place to allow the residents to call for a referendum on road segments that are already OJIM.
But the town has said that they're going to OJIM D-Road and put it in our capital budget, and we haven't asked anybody's permission, we just do it, so.
You just do it when it's improved,
But
that
my
segment gets turned
my
over.
point is the inverse of that, which is that we should decide that X road should stay dirt for a 10-year period. if that were the case, because the residents had either through a referendum decided that, or the town council decided that we incurred enough debt, that we choose not to do it. This bill would not in any way hamper our ability, which is my question, to do that.
No.
All right, there was two other items that we discussed at the GC meeting that I just want to make sure I include, because I don't believe I heard you mention them. And that would be the perfection of the easements on the western side of the farthest boundary that you all have, number one. And I guess it was a combination that these actions that we're taking would result in the town having no question relative to the gas tax propriety of these roads, and that the easements would be sufficient for state law. And the same relative to the western sides of the canals, that these would be available to the town for trails, and that also that the state would recognize that this dual,
Actually,
activity would be accepted.
Actually, the way I thought through it subsequent to our meeting, the right that we're presenting in the bill is essentially saying that these public roads should be considered just as other rural public roads have been considered by the Florida legislature under 95-361. And those strictly deal with the roads. They don't deal with the entire easement that includes the canals. I don't believe it would be appropriate for us to try and stretch 95-361 into including the underlying easements the district has regarding the canals and maintenance roads. I think that would be a stretch that gets the legislature into eminent domain.
Well, a concern I would have in that regard would be, number one, that it would appear to be doing one thing and changing it when the council had given our attorney's direction, relative, consistent with what I said. And that not having been changed, I would be concerned if somehow it was by our attorney. However,
If the
My-
attorney feels,
my-
if
my
the
concern
attorney
is-
feels we can do it, that's different, but I just don't believe it'll fit under 95-361 as a precedent.
my understanding is that canals, which are used as drainage for roads, and their attendant swales and other areas of the right-of-way are all considered roads. And that actually, by the definition of a road, of a public highway, in the state of Florida, the entire right-of-way is considered part of the road. And so I think that perhaps attorneys might review this, especially since it was the town council's directive, and rule on it rather than just working it through in a personal workshop.
That's fine if they can do that, but I believe 95-361 basically defines roads as edge to edge.
That's my point.
Yeah.
From the edge of the right-of-way to the edge of the right-of-way, like on Southern Boulevard from the,
I think that 95-361 is constructed to maintain roads edge to edge, so it's a bit of a stretch, but if they feel that we can do it, it would be an enhancement to everybody's rights to use the canal area and the maintenance road area. So we might leave that up to the attorneys and for them to work with the lobbyist, Rambo, to evaluate the legislative risks. I mean, what we're trying to do is to make the underlying district rights under deed of easements that date back to 1917 as correct as possible. And I think the immediate need is to establish the rights with respect to the constructed and maintained roads so that there's no delay in the work that the college and the developers want to undertake on D Road, and there's no delay in turning over the remaining Ocean Road segments to the town based on maps that have been confirmed by surveys. So, we've got current objectives and longer-term objectives, and I'm content, if our council and the town's council believes that, we've got the kind of argument that would allow us to use 95-361's precedents, that, that'd be fine, but I'm just not sure that's the case.
well, I would like to say from number one that I do think that it would be at least worth doing, trying, and changed, from a process standpoint. If we're trying to work as a council and we're directing our attorney to do a particular thing, we didn't say, and make it a moving target and take these things out. Because one thing about legislation, and it's important if we want, buy-in from everybody and agreement, which is I think what we're aiming for here, that when one person wants one thing and another person wants another, that we don't drop out the things that somebody else wants to do because they feel that their things are more pressing. Because that is generally how people are, that they feel that their concerns are more pressing than those of others. However, as a town and as a council, it is our need to act collegially and worry about everybody's concerns, and not just the concerns of the district road issue, unless that's all it is, which if it is, I don't know why we're being asked to share any costs.
I think our goal is to get what's realistic to get. Now, if the attorneys tell me that based on the modeling of the bill compared to our past bill and with the wording of 95-361 as an argument precedent, we've got a 95% chance of having no problems at the state legislature, and they evaluate stretching it to the westward.
But John, really, all that's really your personal conjecture.
No, it's my statement that let's let the attorneys figure it out if that's what you want to do.
No, I agree. But if
If
what
it's
we
going to
have,
substantially change the prospects of getting the bill, I hope the council will outvote you if you feel that that's an absolute requirement.
that's good, John. The
Okay.
point I'm making is, let's go through that process rather than have you just do it. If you want to be straightforward about it, and what my objection is, you don't have our consensus currently to just change this bill to be whatever you personally feel is appropriate. We said as a council to do a particular thing.
Hey, I'm giving you my opinion tonight. We sat in the IGC meeting and you brought up
No,
this
you
brand
came up
new-
here to
you brought
describe.
up- You brought up this brand new subject, so, let the council
brought
decide.
this up
Get
at the
the input
IGC.
from the attorneys.
I brought it up at the IGC exactly like you did. They were
I
brought
didn't.
up contemporaneously, within 2 minutes of each other, to say that yours is first and therefore precedent is
Let's-
really
let's-
stretched.
I think there's, hold on, I think there's some other issues that we gotta be careful of. The original legislation that gave us the other roads that we now have or are in the process of getting.
Look, if you want to take it out, go ahead and take it out.
No,
But the point I'm
this
making
is
is,
the only-
you're stabbing a lot of folks in the back who've been waiting on these horse trails, and this is your opportunity to say, no, just forget that. Well, that's what I'm hearing.
And I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, we are gonna
You're
have
not,
to.
but he is.
Okay, and you're right. The first legislation that was passed and the roads that we're trying to get did not include that. Should have, but didn't. We're gonna have to go back and address all those. So my thought is if we keep it as close to the original legislation, it passes, but we need to be working on getting all of our right-of-way.
So many folks came here expecting this exact thing to happen, and it didn't.
Well,
So
I really didn't know what to expect when I came here tonight, so I don't know.
Right, and we didn't get backup,
Yeah.
and this is all based on what John says they already
Hey,
do.
I'm giving you
This
my
whole
thoughts,
thing,
Okay.
that's it.
this
Yeah.
whole thing is inappropriate at this point.
Well, I think we're gonna have to, like eating the elephant, several bites at a time and not all of it at once.
Let's open the roads and forget the horse trails. That's what people have been saying for years, and that's what's happening tonight.
And,
I said
and,
it last year when we did this.
and Tom, I don't wanna do that, but I think that we might jeopardize the first part with the other.
But we haven't even taken that step yet, Mayor, and that's the thing. Without a discussion of any kind, this was done because John said so. And that, among other opportunities that's happened, is very inappropriate, okay? Because we didn't say that. We didn't say that as a council. We instructed our attorney to do something. That didn't happen. That's my sole point, okay?
Okay.
And that's not proper, okay? And the other thing that's not proper is to just say, throw the horse trails to the wind and let's not deal with it. That's what we're hearing. I'm okay. Y'all just continue. I'm gonna vote against it, but, it'll be 3-1 and it'll be fine. But I'm not gonna make the motion.
All right, other councilman. Jim?
Seems like we had an IGC meeting, which had a lot of conversation about this subject, several meetings. There were 2 representatives, Tom and John. And of course, we had no action. So if Tom tells us something, he's not speaking for the council, he spoke for what happened in the IGC meeting. When John talks about something, he's speaking for what happened in the IGC meeting. As far as I'm concerned, that's two people that were there. You know, I wasn't. So if John thinks something happened one way, and excuse me, and Tom thinks something else, then that is something that happened at IGC meeting. But one of the things of the workshop was, and your point, I think is a good one, that we wanted to talk about what we can get done and move ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just comment that I feel that I need to.
All right, we're going to take them in order, John, please.
Mr. Mayor,
All right.
here's
Now, let Jim finish. Hold on.
But what he's saying is incorrect because there's this one. So what I'm talking about is our
Excuse me.
council.
No, I Tom, please.
We have talked about a lot of things, we have not set a specific policy from council as to what we were gonna do. We talked about taking the roads, and the last thing we talked about was having, taking the next section, having the roads transferred to us, and they were all related to being improved. And those were the, as you said, the bites of the elephant. So, as I recall, that's where we're headed, and there's more to be done. And we know that there's a big issue with easement because we couldn't identify who owned them. And that, I believe, is Water Control District is still working down that path, so we can keep that. And we can clearly say, this is ours, and here you can have them. But if structuring this bill, it's like the other one, and we make that step, then I think we made progress. And it's one step at a time. If it's looked upon as something to make it easier to get the bill through and get more done, then certainly they should consider it. But I've never heard us say that it's got to be a certain way, nor do I think that it's necessarily the best thing to do is to expand it all-inclusive and then maybe jeopardize getting something done. So, but the council has yet to decide and direct our legal as their involvement with the legal from staff from the Water Control District. And by the way, that's the first thing we have to agree on as a council, that yes, we want legal staffs to work that through and come back. But assuming that.
Okay, let me get to Ron and then to you, Tom. Ron?
John, just one question. The only thing that I was hoping that if we went to legislature, that all the district roads would be turned over to the town. It bothers me that we can't turn them over until we owe them, okay? It seems like I would hope that if we take it to legislature, then we would not have to go again. And that's back to, if we get control of the roads, that takes the responsibility on the districts. And if the town people, if the people of Loxahatchee come to us and say, hey, I want my Ojum road, my road Ojum, then we have to decide yes or no. Now, here's where I have a problem with what the policy existing right now, where we have to do a referendum. I think most people in Loxahatchee would love to have their road done if they didn't have to pay for it. Okay, but now when it comes to a referendum, the way we vote, okay, the way the district felt like it was fair, okay, you take people that don't even live on that road, and they vote whether they want that road paved or not. You've got people on Okeechobee Boulevard paying for C road, A road, and D road, and they don't even use the road for anything. Now you've got people that don't want the road open because they have to pay for it, mainly because they have to pay for it, and they don't have to use North B road. They can use C road, which is paved. They can use A road, which is paved. They can use D road. So the system we've got right now is totally unfair. And it was unfair to begin with, but we had to divvy up the costs so that we could afford to get it done. Now, I disagree with Tom, okay? I wanted you up here because I needed your input, because me and you went to Tallahassee. We talked to the representatives and stuff, and they didn't have a problem at all going from one edge of the road to the other edge of the road if we were going to make that road safer. Now, I do believe that they will have a problem going from the east edge of the road to the west edge of the canal easement, because we've got people and we've got different properties in Loxahatchee where the easement does not go to our fence lines. It goes to the center of the easement road, and you're going to open a can of worms. Now, I fight strongly for our trails. I always have, okay? But I want one problem. I want us to do something constructive this year. I want one problem solved at a time, and then we can move on to the next problem. So my priority has always been that we have safe roads in Loxahatchee Groves. And when I say trails, I'm talking about horse trails, bike trails, and walking trails. Okay, a multiple trail. And I will fight for trails. I will fight for the money to build the trails. The last problem we had with the trails was we couldn't prove ownership of the easements. It wasn't ownership of the roads. It was ownership of the easements. And we'll be discussing that tonight with Southern Land and Timber, about Southern Land and Timber. Okay, we didn't get the reply we were expecting. Okay, so that tells me that this could be a long process as far as us getting easement rights on the west side of the road. So I want to take one thing at a time. I want to give people good roads. And if our legal can tell us that, hey, no, you can take care of both problems just as easy and just as fast, then I'll say, I'll agree with that. But I do not agree with it right now until legal tells me. If they tell me they can take care of both problems at the same time, then I'm going to be surprised. Okay, but as far as the road situation, we've already been through that process. We know it works, and we should make that happen. And the town should gain ownership of the roads, but I like the idea. I don't know why we don't gain ownership of all the roads, the
I
dirt
think
roads.
that's what we're doing. We are.
We're only talking about the district roads right now.
Yeah,
Just-
No, no, no,
correct.
the district.
That's the only ones they
We're
have.
talking about the district roads.
That's what the legislation.
Let me just comment. The bill that we're talking about is not going to prevent the quitclaim turnover of the district roads to the town. The way I explain that, it's going to be up to the town to decide what you're going to do with dirt roads that require employees and equipment. Whether you want to just deal with contractors, or whether you want to contract with the district, or whether you want to defer that and just take over the OJEM roads, which involve a lot less maintenance responsibility. The other thing with Ron's comment about, people having different interests in the roads, when the district first explored how we were going to deal with the road segments, we had an engineering firm. We told them, we said, look at all the parcels in Loxahatchee roads and develop the fairest way to involve all of the parcels in the road segments. And granted, there's an entirely different situation with people that live on Okeechobee Boulevard and have a driveway that goes out to Okeechobee Boulevard. But they're residents of the district, and presumably they use roads other than Okeechobee Boulevard. So that was how all of the parcels got assigned to road segments. And certainly people have different proximities to the actual road segments, but that was what was done. And like I say, the main thing is this bill doesn't prevent turnover of the roads to the town, but it leaves it up to the town to decide when that makes sense.
But this legislation, just to make sure it's clear, this legislation will contain all of the remainder of the district roads.
Yes.
The Loxahatchee roads, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what,
So that if we want them to be quitclaimed the day that this passes, we
we
can
can do it.
We can do that without without.
And that's, in other words, that's exactly right.
Because then our contractor relationship that we have with the district relative to the town roads would be compromised, because they could say, well, unless you're going to also make us the contractor for this, we're not going to turn it over to you. We have to have control of the situation.
And I agree with you there, Tom. That's something we're going to have to deal with at a later time. My problem is, and Tom, I would love to be able to include that, but I think we're going to have trouble with it. And even if we didn't, we're going to have to come back and get it. Well, no, hold on, Tom.
The thing is, that's a point, but that's the point after the first point, which was that we did vote here 5-0 to instruct Michael to include those in the bill. And then tonight, I hear that that's been changed.
It
So
hasn't
there's no
been
reason.
changed.
You said it had.
No,
And why didn't you mention
I
it at all?
said this is my opinion.
No,
This is
John,
my
you were
opinion.
up here to answer questions about the bill, was my understanding.
Well, I told you what my view of the bill was.
All right, this
Okay.
real quick.
It's not, it's,
You know,
I misunderstood. I thought he was being an authority on the bill. I didn't realize everything he said was his
The
opinion.
bill had.
I think one of the things we have to do tonight is we have to step back, take a big breath, and realize that what is doable and what are we going to have to do for a second time. One of the things we're going to have to come back at a later date is the access along the canals on all the roads we already have or are in the process of transferring over to
We
the
could
town.
do that in this.
I don't think so.
We could have two parts of this bill. One that could be taken out if they think. One could relate to the roads that John's referring to. And the other could relate to the west side of all of the roads.
West and east,
The
because
west,
there's,
whatever the issue is
Right.
with the, generally the west side of the canals. That's what I'm referring to.
okay.
That those maintenance issues, which also jog here and there, could be made to say, this is the line. And it's not that hard, because we have the surveys. Of all of the places, I've seen them. We have the survey to say where that is, so let's just get it confirmed. You know, Southern Lands and Timber, that's another issue aside. If we have a legislative act that says that the easement is confirmed to us, that puts us in a far better negotiation position to them, because that means we've got it. We don't have to pay anybody for nothing. So we should try it, because if nothing else, it's gonna save us time, money, and heartache with them. And you can have it two parts in the bill. And I'm not saying make it a do or die, and let's go down fighting if we don't get it. But let's not take it out before we ever get started. And that's what y'all want to do. And I'm just saying, let's put it in there as a second part. And if you don't want to do it, okay, fine. But there's a lot of people here who will see this, and they don't even bother calling. They'll see this as what it is. They're not going to have a horse trail next year, and they're not going to have a year after that, because we'll all say we don't have it. So then some timber might come by, and bigger phosphate might have the horse trail, so it's not going to do it. We can't.
Tom, even if we have a perfected easement and we don't take title under 95-361, they still have the primary land ownership in terms of mineral
We
rights.
should change that. If we're going to have a special act of the legislature, and that means we can create the law, then we should make the law we'd like to have.
I mean, then you're asking the legislature to state a right, however valueless we feel that right is, and strip it from Southern States Land and Timber. And
But couldn't they be their own lobbyist on that issue rather than yourself?
they can come in and say, you know,
I'm just trying to work for the residents. I don't even have a horse, and I'm not going to use a trail, okay? I have no vested interest in this whatsoever. In fact, it's going to put people riding by where I have cows, and they're going to throw stuff over the fence. So it's not going to in any way make life better for me. People have asked me to do this. People are concerned about it. There's a segment of our community, and you may not be one of them, and some other people might not be one of them. There's a significant segment that would like to see this. And your inability to see their side, I
I don't
think.
have an inability to see.
All right,
Well,
so-
then why don't we do
Guys,
two bills? Then why don't we
listen.
do two bills?
And
While we're doing it. Why don't we also fix this problem? Why do we have, you know what I'm saying? Why do we have to make them last all the time?
now I like that idea better than what we were trying to put the two together.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
never said
like-
put it together. I said.
I like supporting the bill as the water control
I'll
for the
support
road, and immediately go together and put another bill together that would include all of the right-of-ways along every road that was a district road, and that would transfer the usage over the town to where it would be able to be used for a horse trail. Now, it's going to take a little more legislation, because 298 does not have that ability. So it is going to take special legislation. I don't want to say that our legislators are not intelligent, please hear me. But if you change something, they don't know what to do with it. So it's going to be real easy to come in and say, this is going to be identical to what we did before, and I think we'll get them to pass it. As soon as we change it, they're going to go, and they're going to reject the whole thing. It's what is my fear. But I would support putting together another bill immediately
That's fine.
and go for it, for all of the right-of-ways in Loxahatchee Road.
That was my understanding that was up, that we wanted to get the district 100%, that they had 100% knowledge, understanding, and legal rights to all the property they needed, and they were going to turn over the roads, and they were going to keep their part, and it was going to be good, and we were going to have the horse trail. If we can make that happen. If it takes 17 bills, that's what people want.
Right.
Right. But I think we need to do it too.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever it takes to get it done, like Jim said, whatever it takes to get it done, that's what
And I
we're doing.
agree. I'm wholeheartely agree.
Okay.
You know, and I know there's issues, And I know the residents have been tired of hearing, we haven't been able to do it because of this and that and the other, and we
So-
want to
so
do it.
Let's figure a way through it. And that way, at least they'll understand if the legislature says no, then it's not us.
Yeah.
Do it in
And this
two
is over
bills.
with, done and done.
Yeah, we do it 2 bills. The one, I don't even understand, and I'll go, it bothers me that anytime you do legislation in the state of Florida, you have to hire a lobbyist, especially when it's like identical to the last time. But that's the culture that has been built up there. Somebody's got to take them by the hand and walk them through it.
Well,
And-
Ron and I saw this firsthand. I mean, the lobbyist, number one, he works with the attorneys on wording that he feels he can sell.
Yeah, and that's not my point, John.
Yeah.
My point is I'm frustrated that it requires somebody to do that to get a bill through, because it seems like that's, you know, I'm not saying it's right up there with a payoff. I'm not saying that. But it just seems like a way of doing business that's wrong, you know, on the state level. But anyway, I think what we need to do is make a motion regarding the roads. I think we need to immediately come back. DJ?
This is a workshop, you can't take any action.
Okay. Well, then at our next meeting or whatever,
You have a consensus, I've certainly heard you loud and clear. I'll confer with Mike, I'll talk to Mary Viator, and then we'll work with Mark. We'll start it, but you will need to take action on a formal basis.
Okay. So we're looking for, since this is a workshop, we're looking for whatever we need to do to get this thing through. We'll be deciding on a lobbyist, and we can decide about the need for it. We'll definitely need it with the next one because it's something that they've never dealt with. You know, Indian Trail, they changed their 298 and became a special improvement district. And it gave them right-of-ways over certain things, or rights over certain things like that. We don't have that, so somehow that has to go through the legislature.
When you explained to the legislature that they passed many years ago, 95-361, to deal with rural roads and the fact that every boundary is not exactly the way that maybe everybody thought it should be, but it was what is existing and what's been built and maintained, that's easy for them to understand. Once you get beyond that, it gets a little more difficult. Now, you know, that's, if as long as we do it in 2 bills, that makes it easy to have the legislature decide on one or both of them. And, you know, we can make the arguments, but what I started out, and I introduced my comments saying that after the meeting, I rethought what I felt was doable as modeled pretty much after the original bill. And I felt very confident that we can get that through. Tom made an argument that's not illogical, but it is a stretch. And it's not based on 95-361 being out there as an easy crutch. So
We're 2 different governing entities, and I think if we can push both through, you know, then that's what we want to do. And like I said, the one will include all of them, the ones in the previous roads and the future. So, anyway, all right, any other comments?
And in this one, we're also including the North Road segments that we owned already,
yes,
and all the different pieces, F Road and Compton.
exactly.
Brian.
Exactly.
Oh,
Well, no, not Brian,
Not
not
Brian,
the
you're
town
still
roads.
doing Brian, the other.
We've already quit claimed Marcellus
Marcellus.
and Compton, and we've got a process to quit claim Bryan. But the town roads are different than the
But
district
the F Road
roads.
situation, you mentioned F Road, you're talking about just the new pieces of F Road that?
No,
Because the county had already
the
moved.
county approved North F, South F, and then the new segment.
So is that somehow included in the bill?
Yeah.
To get the, to
It's
get.
basically all
The reason I say it is because I'm privy to having seen the survey, and there's just some very minor things that are.
That's what I'm saying.
Sort of
All
chip
the-
off here and there.
all the district road segments that were not specifically identified in the original bill. That takes care of the gaps, F Road,
Right.
all the district roads.
Good. All right. Any other discussion on this one? Jim?
DJ, I guess what we're looking for, what I'm looking for is our next meeting where we can make a decision and vote on it. In other words, the possibilities of the 2 bills and some kind of idea of what they would be, taking them to the legislature, but keeping them separate. So that shouldn't be a problem. You know, I think we could even do it by our next meeting and leave us November the 5th. Would that be,
We'll
Two
certainly have a
weeks.
conversation with council, the district has used in the past, and be able to report to you the benefit of his insight as to how to proceed and talk to him about the two-bill approach.
okay,
No, we're not gonna. Some of us will.
and Steve, you're legal, in other words, contact Mary, do the same thing, okay? And our next meeting, we can vote whether we support a lobbyist and we want to pay for it.
And we need to discuss the lobbyist over that.
Okay.
You have anything else?
I'd hope everybody could get the attorneys to get a draft circulated to both the board and the district and town council before the November 5th meeting.
Well, respectfully to that point, we're not gonna draft that. That's gonna have to come from council in Tallahassee, and I'm gonna suggest to you that he's gonna need to be retained prior to producing a work product.
We retained him,
Okay.
but we retained him with not as expansive a two-bill approach.
Right.
And, with reference to modeling it after the original bill. Now, that's what the district board voted on, so we can change that.
So you're basically looking for somebody to share the cost?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we might need a different lobbyist for the trail. I mean, honestly, if he is good at roads, but not
I
trails.
think it's special districts that we're doing it. We're
Is that-
identifying that.
Maybe it is, okay, I'm just saying, maybe.
Really, to me,
maybe
it's the exact same problem. It's that there was a specific piece of property that was laid out in 1917, and due to the lack of technology, today you're able to realize that there's differences. Whereas for 50 years, nobody cared, and for the next 50, they said, well, what are we going to do to fix it? Well, now it's 100 years later, and the technology can explain to us that this is 2 feet farther than it needs to be, or 3 feet that way, or this guy's fence is in our place, or we've got ours in his. So it's easy enough now to take those surveys, get it all said to be right, and you correct me if I'm wrong, John, I thought we were on the same page with this.
It's a laudable objective. When I said I stepped back and rethought it, and what I presented as my opinion earlier, was just with respect to getting absolutely the district level.
That's A, but B,
Yeah.
I think could be done by the same man, wouldn't you agree? Or the same
Oh,
person?
absolutely.
Okay.
I think.
Not that I'm trying to show for him, but I think that if he has special district expertise and experience, that he'll be able to explain exactly that. The exact same reason the roads are the way they are is the same way the other side, where we've mowed or not mowed, or done or not done. A road is a perfect example. If we had not had a cooperative landowner and not a contiguous landowner the whole way, that could have been a total catastrophe with people coming out there telling me, oh, you're on my land, this and that, I own the canal, and all this other crazy stuff, which isn't true, based on where the survey.
That's where
markers are.
95-361 came in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but the other point, and I think we didn't address this, is the turnover to the district aspect. In many cases, the road is not even on the district. We won't say where, but it isn't. So the question is, why do you give it to the district unless that 95-361 does it? Okay, and if that's the reason, that's the reason.
And it's
But
an
that's a
easement
question
only.
that's out there that probably needs an answer.
It's an easement only that does not change the land area of the residents. It just recognizes that this is a public road that's been built, maintained, and used as a public road. And all it does is confirm the easement right. It doesn't change anybody's land ownership. And one benefit, which is a meaningful benefit to the landowners, is that it makes clear that if there's an accident, that landowner doesn't get dragged into the lawsuit because of the condition of the road.
My question is why it doesn't just go directly to the town as the result of the legislation, rather than a quitclaim deed, that it doesn't just recognize in the legislation that it's.
I think it goes in under the thing that it would be hard to prove that we have.
Okay, that's fine.
And
That's
the
good
road
enough.
is
That is actually good enough answer for me, so long as they're going to turn it over to us and
They
not
have the
have a
ability to do it.
veto,
There you
and
go.
it's our decision to make, pro or con, then I'm okay with it.
Yep.
Okay, so concept of a lobbyist, I understand that that's, and you point out, it's the way it works. I don't look at it as anything other than a sponsor to something. In my my days in business, it's no different than somebody that's making a presentation, that's their bailiwick, or that's their particular responsibility, or that's their idea, and they're taking it forward, and they present it, and they have to take the time out to do that, and you have various audiences to hear that. So I look at it as the same thing. You need a sponsor, and we call them lobbyists, but you have a sponsor that takes something forward and is available to answer questions, but is on the spot kind of representative, rather than let something might fall through the cracks. You might not get the interest. You might not get the question may not get answered. So people, if they don't understand it or don't have answers, they usually kind of go negative.
Right.
So I accept that as something we would do. Now, I understood the board, they were looking for us to share the cost of the lobbyists, and I presume it was half and half. So we'll talk about it later, but I think we want to do that. When it comes to the second bill, which is specific to trails, then we may have to talk about that further. It may be a second issue, but specific to trails. There's not a member of this council that does not want the trails to go in. We've never said anything other than that. Everybody's been supportive of that. There's not a member of the Water Control District that has not cooperated and demonstrated that they want the trails to go in. We've all been up against this legal limitation, and we can work through it. And because when we all forget, I think, that one of the first major tasks of our new management team was to try to go through and work on getting a grant on trails. And we ran right smack into, brick wall on that, but it wasn't like we weren't trying, and everybody that was involved, every government agency, was working to get it done. So that didn't work. We found out some things that we now learn more things about title and ownership and what you have to get a grant. So we just spent a lot of time working, but every single person, there's 10 people in government that support putting trails in. And so if anybody thinks something's different.
Just for
that's
clarity,
mistake.
to supplement what Jim is saying, the district turned over the 1917 deed of easement as part of the documentation for the town's application for the grant.
Sure.
And the grant approval people said that they were concerned that that wasn't sufficient for them to be assured of uninterrupted access.
Okay. All right.
And that actually was my point of why we needed to make sure that we had a local bill. That it was.
No, and I
If
agree
we
with
can
you.
do that,
We have to do that.
thank you,
That is-
and I'm glad that everybody's reconfirmed their dedication to the issue, because I think that, quite rightly, there's folks who would like to see something get done, okay? And just put it that way, and that would be awesome.
One other thing, Mr. Mayor, that I want to comment on. I don't look at this process that we're working with the Water Control District as us against them. I look at it as a cooperative effort. I don't look at us trying to put something together that gives us a stronger bargaining position. I look at us as the board, us 10 of us, all of us working together to get something done. So I don't feel that that's the council's intent, is us versus them. And so what I'm hearing is a little of that, and I may have misunderstood it, but clearly we are trying to work together, and we're all cooperating. I'm looking for an upper hand.
We're all in the same family. And when we're even talking about sharing the cost of the lobbyists, all of it is paid for by the taxpayers of Loxahatchee Grove. So every bit of it. So whether we pay half of it, you pay half of it, or we pay all, every bit of it comes out of every one of our pockets. So, it doesn't really matter. So,
And you're getting the road segments.
yeah.
And my only concern is that we don't have some sort of catch-22, and that's why it's important that not that we're in charge and they're not. But somebody's a decision maker, because if you want to say they can decide when we turn it over, just put that in the bill and people can vote on that. But we should say we're the decision maker, as John suggested, and that was the economy.
All right. TJ?
To address that issue, let me assure you that the bill will come before you for approval, before it's submitted. So you get an opportunity to see it, and if it's not acceptable to you, then we'll certainly be advised and work with the Tallahassee Council, but you'll have the opportunity to approve the bill.
Right.
And I think we will want to discuss, any differences in the way that we turn the road segments over and what the town agrees to do.
Okay. All right. Frank?
the same lobbyist is gonna be the key here. Having two different lobbyists, you're not gonna get nothing done. And having the bill separated, one for trails, one for roads, we already know the road bill is pretty much gonna be the same as we had for the road segments. The legislature's already seen that. That shouldn't be a hard thing for them to grasp this time around. I think by having the lobbyists come in also and seeing the, both of the bills and saying, well, this one here, I've already argued this point, they're gonna remember this. This one here, we may have some problems. And that's where we need, he's gonna be the expert here. And without him getting involved in this, the others, bill number 2 may not pass. Or he may say we may have to word this differently, and then that's where the attorneys jump in and they word it differently. The whole thing is getting the horses separated from the cars, and we all agree that that's a good thing. But by putting them all together in one bill, I do agree that that probably won't fly.
Thank you, Frank. All right, I've got Todd McClinton and Virginia Stanton.
Todd McClinton, 3041 D Road. The town attorney's already looked into these roads and has already stated that you guys are legally collecting gas tax money on these roads. I'm just kind of curious as to why we're having to jump through hoops and spend all this money to do something that we've been doing since the town's incorporated. Why do we need to clarify anything? According to him, everything's fine.
Thank you, Todd. Virginia?
Oh, that was quick. Virginia Stanish, 15410 North Road, speaking as private citizen and landowner. Let's acknowledge what 95-361 did before. It was needed to cover up 100 years of mismanagement of letting graders go wherever they want on landowners' property. I love the way everyone stretches the verbiage to make it sound good to the legislatures. God bless you. There was a lot of stretching going on up there from what I heard to get what you wanted. Let me just say this. Regarding the money, it's like you're piling money on and piling money on, and you didn't get it right the first time. As landowners, we're listening to you wondering, are you going to get it right this time? Seems to me we have a 1917 right-of-way. Somebody wants $200,000 unless they jacked up the price because now you've told them you really want it. It seems like $200,000 for right-of-way, which many people would put under recreation and leisure in a town budget, might work. I don't understand why the roads have to be Ogen to be turned over to the town. I'm glad you're dealing with that issue because basically that's blackmail. Supposedly we have a referendum to allow us to vote, but if they don't hear what they want, then people keep coming saying, well, we got to do this again, and we got to do it again, and the town's not going to get this road till it's Ogen. That's blackmail. It's coercion. So I'm glad the town is finally dealing with that one. Also, again, acknowledging that the district and the town have been supportive of horse trails, I beg to differ. 30 years in this town, don't sell me manure that gets dumped across the canal, please. We already sell it. And I'll give you an example. If the district really supported horse trails, why have they not enforced opening gates on those right-of-ways? I live on North Road. I didn't get to put up a gate on my right-of-way easement that was to the half of the road. I didn't get to put up a gate to stop cars from cutting through. But the other side gets to put up gates. So that, to me, shows lack of support for horse trails. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving to 2 D road approvals.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight we have Joe Kalanick from Atlantic Land Department, from Atlantic Land South, F. Martin Perry, representing Silver Sports, and we have a number of Palm Beach State College officials in the audience. As the town council is aware, most of these folks have made a representation in the past that they were going to improve B Road and have Ogen go to the B Road in the development over to the Boulevard. I can tell you that both town officials and water control district officials have been meeting with the developers. The developers have been meeting for some time to attempt to determine the proper prorations that they would for the cost of doing the improvements. However, and I think they have reached that point and they're ready to go there. The PUDs are going to be coming before town council for approval November 5th. However, one of the issues that has come across in our discussions is the fact that with B Road, there is an issue with the roadway and right-of-way being outside of the actual road, the roadway being on private right-of-way, shipping, if you will. And that is a concern to the development interest, and I think they're going to tell you that tonight, but the issue would be, obviously, they can't undertake improvements if there are right-of-way issues that need to be resolved. That's probably something that the town will have to do. So what they want to do, I think, is tell you a little bit more about where they're at in the process. I believe the proposal you'll hear from them is to go ahead and do all the improvements necessary on that segment of B Road that fronts both developments, but looking to possibly put the funds into an escrow account at some point in time for the town and district in combination when we're ready to go ahead and do those improvements. So with that, I guess, I don't know, Joe, if you want to make a presentation to the council, or?
I think it'd probably be best to bring everybody up to speed on exactly where we are with the roadway.
Yeah, before that, real quick.
Sure.
Just so we can define the problem a little bit better than Mark just, the road that they want to do and that we want them to do, does it go outside the boundaries of where the existing road is?
Yes.
Okay, so rather than the 95-361 issue that we're discussing previously, now we have an issue of condemnation of additional.
It goes,
Realistically, is that what's?
Yes. Do you know how far it goes?
Well, I think we need to clarify road versus outside of the existing confines of the right-of-way. What we're proposing, and let me just give you kind of a background, and it'll come around to answer your question. As was mentioned briefly by Mr. Cutney, three parties, the Atlantic Land Investments Group that I'm one of the partners on, Solar Sports represented by Mr. Perry, and Palm Beach State College have had repeated meetings to try to resolve everybody's understanding and relationship related to the paving or OJMing of B Road. Our understanding is that based on community input on the Planning and Zoning Board as well as the Greenways and Trails, that we would be dealing with a split roadway program, OJM from the north entrance to the college up to Okeechobee Boulevard. The thought process on this location was to try to limit the paved section as far to the south as possible so that we could restrict traffic from wanting to go north into the more rural section of B Road. Channeling this down from a standard paved section down to almost a curbed radial, and then starting the OJM along with the speed humps or whatever design details the town and the water control district would want on this section of road going north to prohibit or to discourage traffic from turning going north on B Road. That portion from the entrance to the college going south would be a paved section. And that would be more to current standards, whether it be county, water control district, or town-derived standards on how this roadway to the south was going to look. It is also our understanding that the OJM section, we were going to, as a tri-party agreement, fund so that either the water control district or the town could take those funds and do the improvements to OJM that section of roadway. Now, to answer your question, Mr. Goltene, from what we can understand, from the best information we have so far, it appears that the existing road confines go outside the right-of-way. However, it's my understanding that the OJM surface, at least what we've been told, would go right over top of that roadway. So I believe that, if I understand your legislative direction, I believe that you're looking to get control of those roadways as they sit in the field. So we don't want to get in the middle of any right-of-way acquisition. That's not something we signed up for or even thought of when we were dealing with this before. Three parties have looked at this as funding an OJM section going to the north as a paved OJM section only, complete with speed humps and so forth. And we also understand that there's a canal upgrade here to deal with the crossing, to take that from the smaller culvert-style bridge that it is right now to more of a pipe section to make that a little safer intersection right there. But that's all we understood as our obligation would be going to the north. Now going to the south, it would be a 3 to 5 lane section depending on where you sit. 3 being that area roughly between the entrance to the college down to about 600 or 700 feet off of Southern Boulevard, which would handle a northbound, southbound, and a directional turning movement for the left turns into the properties on the west side, and the left turn as a southbound into the property on the east side. When you get down closer to the intersection, you end up with turn lanes, both a transitional into a turn lane into the Solar Sports Systems property to the east, as well as a right turn lane for traffic going out on the Southern Boulevard, turning right on Southern Boulevard. And those improvements would require some modifications to the signal. We're still working with DOT to see what is required there. But those are the understanding that the 3 parties have in this program. Now conceptually, all 3 parties have come up with a cost-sharing mechanism, or at least a percentage that each person is obligated to do. What has not been finalized, and this is part of the reason to bring the Water Control District and the Town Council into the mix, is how this was going to be handled from a detail for that section going north, as well as who is going to be installing that, constructing it, or administering it. The area to the south, that's the paved section that's all within our property confines, that's easy. The 3 individual interests here can pretty much handle that on their own. Our desire is set up an escrow agreement for the OJM section to cover the paving of that OJM as well as the canal upgrades, and to just fund that at the same time that we go ahead and fund the construction of that south portion as well. Now from a general timing standpoint, it is our thought process is that over the next month or sooner, that we come up with a framework of an agreement that everybody can sign on, including the town and water control district, knowing the detail and the people that you need to have involved into this. And over that next month, set that agreement in place that would be going along with the zoning approvals for both of these 2 properties. At the first of the year coming up, we would go ahead and fund the design and permitting of our section of the road to the south. And at the end of 2014, let's say the January 1st of 2015, these 3 parties would fund both the escrow for the OJM section and the construction pot, we'll call it, for the south section of this roadway that we would be constructing. And that construction would start on the south section of that roadway immediately thereafter. What we're understanding from the latest information from the college, as well as ourselves and so forth, is that the college is looking to start some minimal land development as early as the first of the year, or first quarter of the year, on their section, which also includes the funding mechanisms for some of these permitting processes as well. And ultimately would have a construction start for delivery of the first phase of this as early as the end of 2015 through the first part of 2016. Those are some general guidelines. They have not finalized those numbers or timelines yet, so they're kind of slightly in flux. Our standpoint, we're looking about the same time frame in terms of development. We would look to develop our property the end of next year as a start time and do the construction along with this roadway with our site. It should work out very well for earthwork as well as other construction comments. I don't believe that Solar Sports has any clearly defined timelines as of yet, but those will be evolving as we go through. Now, from our standpoint, we had started this process with Lisa Sonier, who was Steve's predecessor with the Water Control District. Understood that we had a defined set of numbers and directions to go on. We understand that those have evolved to today, and there's some differing opinions and so forth. Right now, we're looking to get further input by now Steve, your group with Water Control District, as well as the Town Council, so that we can solidify the design and escrow requirements for this roadway, because we are under one assumption in terms of the previous numbers that were given to us by Mr. Sonier, and we don't know what that's going to do now with how the transition is taking place with the town and the Water Control District. And we certainly, and I think I can speak for all three parties, we certainly have not provided any surplus for right-of-way acquisition or some other things that could potentially be there. Again, all we're looking to do is make sure that we honor that commitment for the OJM portion here, but not get in the middle of other issues that may come up that don't involve our properties. But want to make sure we're moving forward in a positive direction. Now, Marty, do you want to add anything to this?
Only a couple of points. Number one, things don't move very quickly out here, and that's not intended to be an insult in any way, but now add 5 lawyers into the mix relative to this agreement. And, I don't see that happening by November 5th. And we're all anxious to get through, and frankly, before we commit to spending all that money, we want to know, A, how expensive is it going to be, and B, are we going to have an approval? So it seems to me, and I've had discussions with Mr. Fleischman since I can't talk to anybody else, and it seems to me that we all know what our respective obligations are relative to off-site road improvements, and those are conditions that can be attached to our approvals, so the approvals can keep moving while we're working on this agreement, with another condition being added, and that is that it is all subject to this agreement being reached by all parties. But the issue relative to B Road is a significant issue, and it's significant because we've had an understanding now for several years, one understanding relative to B Road, and it's becoming much more complex now with all these issues as to where's the right-of-way, is there right-of-way, where does the road lay within the right-of-way, and now you put a whole new complexion on what's this going to cost, and we have no idea what those numbers are, and there's a limit to how much you can afford to spend. Maybe it's time to just go home. We want to work this out, but we need to know where we're going.
I think Marty addressed all the things I was going to say. We don't know what that number is, and if we don't know about right-of-way acquisition, because Joe said one thing, Mark said another, so I think that until we get those type of answers in stone, that this is where the road needs to go, we don't know how much it's going to be. It's difficult, I understand that they agree to pay up to an amount, maybe they could come to that point and say how much you...
Well, we've got some estimates that we've come up with already that are based on OJMing the existing roadway. We can provide those, and those were prepared by the college's engineer as estimates. We can refine those. We've had our engineer, who's actually doing the OJM road over on, is it F? Okay. And he's got more current estimates that he can tie together with Mr. Gerwig and come up with a much more refined figure. The only things that we were in the dark about was there's been some debate back and forth of should the road start right at the college's entrance or should it start at Collecting Canal? I think from everything I've heard at the meetings that we've had so far through P&Z, the desire is to keep the rural atmosphere of the town as far south as we can put it, which would make it right at the college. So that once you got past the college, anyone wanting to go north realize that, they're going into rural territory.
No, that's what we discussed at the RETAC committee.
And if we can do that, we can refine that, we can refine those numbers so that we can give you a number. And we have no problem with posting that number. And I'll be very frank with you, the other issue is one that was talked about here when you had Mr. Ryan up there. And that's the issue of, you all own the road, I mean, one of the two of you owns it, and sooner or later the town's gonna own it.
Well, then
We're here basically to give you the money, for you to hire the engineer to design whatever it is you wanna build, you know, and to give you the money to pave this portion that we agreed to, and you do with the money whatever you wanna do with it. We don't want the liability associated with the road, it's your road.
I understand that. The question I have, and I guess it's for our staff, is that adequate that they're going to do that, or is there right-of-way acquisition that it'd be on property not within the three-party properties?
My understanding was that there could be some acquisition now based
Maybe
upon
at the
what,
Okeechobee end, where
based
you
upon
have
what you
to,
talked about tonight, going road edge to canal edge, whatever you want to call it, edge to edge, that may resolve it. I don't know for sure. I don't know what to say.
would there be some sort of turn roads at Okeechobee or something like that that may come into play that we would have to deal with, or anything like
I'm
that?
not aware of
I mean,
that.
just say that what he's saying is that what they want to pay for is all we want. And I think then we're able to proceed with giving some estimates. I mean,
But I would say at this point, we have not seen the numbers, so I haven't had an engineer on our side look at what they're going to propose.
Yeah, I was going to say, somehow in the agreement, it's going to have to say that whatever it ends up
It'll
being
lay
is
those,
what you're going to pay.
it'll lay those numbers out. But I, you know, I mean, I can tell you so far, the numbers are numbers that would make me choke, without going much further.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, real quick, the wider road segment, is that situated on that map such that it only affects one or the other of y'all's property? Because that's no problem, that's your property.
Yeah, that's on their property.
All right,
That's
well,
theirs to
The
do.
water section would fit all within the existing right-of-way here. Now, there's three properties over on the east side of this roadway. And in a perfect world, you'd want additional right-of-way from those three properties. However, we don't have the ability to do it. And what we're proposing is that the pavement fit within the existing right-of-way, and it will fit. We're gonna do sidewalks just through the two entrance points over on the commercial side, and anything north of that on one side, the western side only, would be a bridle path of some sort. Either a mulched area or a sodded area that would be within the right-of-way along that western side. So no impact, we're not proposing doing any impact for those three properties.
That's the main thing I want to get across, because I don't think the district ever indicated we could do anything other than the existing road, the road. And as long as I understood correctly, and I hope that town council understands this, that any of the wider segments and turn lanes, that's your property that you're going to use for that
Correct.
portion of it.
That's correct.
So that
Right.
once we get to the limits of your property, we've gotten through the entrances that you're concerned with, and all we're doing is road edge to up to Okeechobee Boulevard.
That's correct.
That's fine.
And that's been our understanding from day one.
Yeah.
And that
And our-
seems already there was some talk over the last month or two that some right-of-way acquisition may be involved, and I wanted to make sure that we were covered.
Where did that talk come from?
Well, one of the things, though, and I want to point out, right-of-way acquisitions are a funny thing. We have, the Water Control Board has dealt with this in the past. When we took the access for the canal along Folsom, Fleet worked out a formula that was very good. There were some landowners over in Royal Palm Beach that thought they were going to get rich. And he took the value of the lot and he paid them per square foot of what they had. Now, you've got 44,000 square feet in an acre roughly. You know, our land out here is not going for $44,000 an acre.
You're right. It's not
So
worth a lot
what are we
per
talking, 50 cents a square foot? So if you took 3 foot along the whole property line, you're talking 150 feet. I mean, we're not sending some kid to college, but so it's not as big a thing as we're all saying, oh, it could be great, but it's not going to affect the college. And I think we can build it within what's there.
Keep it as simple as possible.
Keep it simple.
I mean, I had heard talk about condemnation, and condemnation suits and all that is expensive, you don't want to worry that as a town, I don't think that's our.
I think we'll have to deal with that more with horse trails, honestly, you know, and we'll have to do it. But we'll do it by square footage, and it won't be that big.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we're saying that. I think part of, first of all, part of the legislation that we're looking to go forward on, like the other legislation that was done, is it's the road service.
No,
We're talking
no,
about the road today. So taking that and adding that to the bill, which is another one of the, just one of the other district roads, is the surface that we currently have. It's
Sure.
the only surface we're talking about Ojai. So there's no land taking, there's
No, I said that only for the horse trails. I think we'll have a little bit of that, maybe.
And that's,
And that's not the road.
that's a separate issue.
That's separate issue. Yeah. All right, Ron?
Marty, we got a situation on F Road in Southern now, the medical plaza. The contract we had with them was, I think they set aside $136,000, John can correct me if I'm wrong, in escrow. But in that same contract, it was said that if it costs more than $136,000, that they would be obligated to pay for it. Now, I would think that with the engineers from the college, from y'all, our engineers and stuff, they could probably come to a fairly steady price. But that's the one thing I would want. In other words, I wouldn't want you to commit to a price and then we come up short.
Well, I can tell you this much, we can't commit to an open-ended checkbook. However, we have been asking Rob Rennebaum, who has been familiar with that F Road Ojai section, to base an estimate off of what he is now looking at in numbers for F Road. So I think we have a pretty good here and now price on what some of these improvements are going to cost. So it's as good as we're going to get at this point in time.
Well, no offense to it, but I mean, in response to your question, I mean, I think that normally what happens is you post the estimated amount, and it's an engineer's cost estimate. Plus 10, 15, or 20%. And I think as long as we define what the road is, and that what we're doing is ojiming the surface of the existing roadway, that if there's a difference there, I think we can work out language that if there's a shortage, we'll come up with it. If there's an overage, we'll get refunded, one way or the other. I think that's fair, and I've seen that done many times.
We're not looking to
I
make.
mean, I don't think anybody's looking to make money. Nobody's.
Right.
The shortage shouldn't be anything significant if we can identify the segment.
Right. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, we can actually go out for bids on that road. We can actually go out and get a bid back and give us and we can use all the engineers we want. But if you can get somebody to step up and say, we will do the work, and they qualify, and we rely heavily on the staff that's gone through this last exercise to make those determinations, and
In reality, though, it might not be an issue, because they're talking about doing it January 2015, correct? That you'll be funding your section. By then, we should have our legislation done. We could have a contractor on board and maybe do it all at the same time. So, I mean,
That's when the amount's determined is
right.
a year from now versus.
I think what probably scares them is if we sit on it for 2 or 3 years, the cost of everything goes up 40%, and then we say we want the road done, then that's unfair to them. So I think it can probably happen about the same time. But anyway, it sounds like we're on track. Ron?
The other thing you need to keep in mind, we talked about Ojai from one side to the other side, okay? They're just a little bit more involved in that. In other words, the mistake we made on the roads that we've Ojai now, okay, the drainage was cut by 50% of what they agreed with initially. So you're talking, and they're putting in some good drainage things right now. They did a couple on A Road, outstanding job. Okay, so we have to figure in drainage to allow the water to run off the road into the canals, just like Southern Boulevard or anything else. So keep that in mind. All that has to be figured in. Now, what I would like to see personally is if we went out for bids or we had an estimated cost from y'all, I want the people to get their road done before the college gets built. So if we could take from where you want to end and you were satisfied with the cost, we need to pave the road for the people. Okay, I'm kind of tired of people in Loxahatchee waiting until the medical plaza gets done but that was a different situation. They had construction and stuff. But from collecting canal from the entrance to the college north, that doesn't affect y'all. So it does affect the residents of Loxahatchee Road. So if we could get a decent bid on that, you were in agreement, hey, this is better than what we thought, you know what your prices are going to be when you get them, then I want to see that done. That's a commitment that's done ahead of time. And then if you decide you don't want to build a college or you don't want to, we don't suffer because people need to come first. so that's what I like to see. I see the biggest problem is the crossover at Clayton Canal and B Road. Now, they may have to be some condemnation for that crossover, but I don't even know if we've decided on what kind of crossover we want. I think we should have decided by now. Y'all should have been aware of it, and we should have known. We talked about it too long not to know what kind of, that's gonna benefit the people. It's gonna be best for the people. It's gonna be the best for horse trailers to come and go, and stuff like that. So that's where I'm coming from.
And just to answer that real quick, in terms of the timing, our present timing that I illustrated earlier would put us roughly a year for design and permitting. When you think about that, that's probably what it's going to take. And funding would be January 1 of 2015. That would put construction and completion prior to the first CO of any of these uses. So you'll be right on timeline with completion prior to anything opening for business. And I think that our two projects would certainly accept conditions to that, and put that in the...
Like no COs without it being done.
Correct. Because it's our intent to have this up and operational along with... Now, again, if the town or the water control district, in our opinion, is doing this construction, all we can control is the payment of money. So it's really payment of money that dictates the completion of that, not the completion of the improvement. The other side, or the other comment that you had made regarding the detail and design of this, we've been looking at this in somewhat of a vacuum based on old information. We don't know what your current design specs are going to be or be required, and that really involves both of your input into what is the drainage required, what are you doing currently that's working, what are those speed humps and so forth, so that we can take this and massage it a little bit so that it works more with what you're looking to do long term. So we need your input. We can't design this without your input, and from our standpoint, it'd be better off if your own designers, your own engineers, look at that section of roadway and say, this is what we need, and this is what works for us, and move forward with that based on an open section and your drainage requirements. In terms of the canal crossing, I believe that we had looked at this a number of ways, but the most efficient, the best for traffic circulation is that 8-foot pipe connection or plus or minus whatever that dimension is, that goes across that canal in a T-form so that you have a little better side areas for recovery and so forth. And it doesn't look so much like a narrow bridge out there. And that will give you side areas for equestrian crossings that would be along the edge of the right-of-way, just like we're proposing to the south in that section. So we need your input. We need to know which engineer is going to be looking at this from the design, giving us the specs. Once we have those specs, we can go ahead and take them and start getting numbers to it. And we can even work with whoever you would recommend to bid these items or give us an estimate of cost so that we can take that one step further.
All right. Good deal. One quick thing though, and it really is not going to affect your cost or anything else, but I'm going to be very adamant that all construction deliveries come from Oak Southern, that none of them come through B Road. Because I don't want concrete trucks coming down there, I don't want lumber trucks coming down through there. We have rules in the town about no through traffic, but you're gonna need to tell your contractors, as they build or your builder, that all deliveries need to come in off Southern Boulevard.
We have no problem with that.
And I know, because it's not gonna cost you a thing, but we want to tell you up front so that nobody's surprised later on. So anyway, all right, any other questions for Joe?
One other thing to keep in mind is when you start construction, okay, you're gonna have to have some type of security there, because that's gonna be easy access for anybody who wants to steal from you right off Southern Boulevard or maybe thoroughfare. And I don't expect PBSO to be covering that area as far as, when you catch somebody, or that you call them, but I would hope that you've already planned for security.
We certainly don't want thefts of property to add residents. So, yeah. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I think that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. All right, do we have another one along this line?
Your Honor, item number 3 was basically a catch-all for the two items. unless somebody else has something otherwise to do.
All right, so we're gonna take a break, we're gonna call the workshop, and then we're gonna start our special town council meeting right after the break, so, take care.
Could be better, could be worse. Could be better, could be worse.
Plenty of pills, tried it once, didn't do a damn bit of good. You going on Thursday morning? The mantra I came up with is breathe, not me. You going to the Board of County Commission meeting this Thursday morning?
Well, let's go. Come on, let's get done in 20 minutes.
Be nice to have yeah.
Where's Jim?
I support that. When I was up there, we never won.
That's good, we're gonna like that. Where's Jim?
We got a quorum.
Huh?
We got
We got a quorum. All right. Yeah, he'll be in. All right, we're discussing the town involvement regarding the approaching Minto West and Highland Dunes. The key is obviously the Highland Dunes thing, because that's what was done. Palm Beach County Commission on Thursday. So, discussion. Mark?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think it is to discuss our approach and how we're going to handle it, and more importantly, or at least in conjunction with that, you may remember at your last meeting when you were talking about going to at least try to have a conversation with several county commissioners, and Councilman Rocket indicated that he wanted you to have the ability of a town attorney to provide any additional information. The problem was we didn't take a vote on that. We didn't have consensus as to what you want to allocate. Because number one, both of these projects coming up quite unexpectedly, we did not have this budget. So we'll have to make the proper budgetary requirements. Plus, I think when I say, relative to our approach, do you want to have our town attorneys plus our town planner, any other town consultants as maybe needed by this team in assisting you where you want to go. So that's what we're trying to expand that discussion and just get it down as to where the town wants to proceed.
All right. Comments by the council first? If I could, and I'll leave this off because I've been dealing with it. I think we're close to the end of needing additional stuff, especially for the Highland Dunes project. That is coming up this Thursday. We are getting a lot of support from the communities around us. And there was a planning meeting even this evening about how to go about this. Mike gave me some good information. He did some research, gave me some good information. I gave it to the county commissioners. Dennis Lipp and I met with each one of the county commissioners, one-on-one. Whether we got them to see our way, but bottom line is we were able to share with them the concerns we have of the density of this project, and more than the density of this project, but every other project out there is looking at this one, including Minto, who wants to more than double what they were allowed to build by the county. So it's the beginning of a fight. Now, I think it's important that we spend not a lot, but I think it's important that we don't get too tight with our money right now, because this will affect Okeechobee big time. But we want to keep it the least bit rural and, you know, lower traffic. We're going to have to fight against some of these developments around, especially those that are trying to just right off the bat double the density. So anyway, that's where we're at. It goes before the county commission on Thursday. 9:30 in the morning is the county commission meeting. I don't know what time it comes, but that's when it's going to come forward. Now, do we want to allow Mike to go there and speak on that as far as the things that he wrote up?
Sure. And I'm not sure, do we have to have a separate budget if we have legal expenses? We just have to authorize Mike's activity. We already have a budget that he's covered under. But if we run into trouble later, we'll have to look at increasing.
But remember, it didn't end at Mike. Mike made a comment at the end of the meeting, and we had to use Jim Fleischman services and assisting Mike. At one point, we were thinking about possibly using our traffic engineer, so I'm trying to be proactive to indicate that in terms of Highland Dunes and Minto that's coming forward, you want to establish a budget so that any of these buildings can come from that budget.
My thought, pretty much everything that Mike's done to date, we'll be able to just use for Minto. So it's not like we need to duplicate all of it. I don't even think we were looking at some traffic thoughts. I don't know that we're going to need that even in the future, but we have a little more time with the Minto.
That's on the next week. They're asking for the ground.
They're coming, they're not asking for their amount, they're asking just for a individual way of running it through over the next year and a half. So whether they're going to get it or not, I don't know.
Do we want to speak against that?
And I'll be going to those meetings and I'll be speaking against them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be make sure those won't slip through. Tom?
Well, I support the idea of going to the meetings and talking to them. I really would caution against,
Like I said,
sort of
I just wanted to run it by you, so that it's a little
really
brutally
extensive expenses regarding consultants, traffic consultants and all that. Because that was a lot of what happened with Tower Jeff. Complete waste of time. It all boiled down to a legal political game. And all of that was just to lead us in our country.
Sure.
And so I don't think we should go down that same road. At the same time, I think Highland students may only be a red herring for the Minto thing. And the Minto is very close behind on the heels of, you know. However, from what I've heard, people at Minto want to give money to the town of Waxahachie Groves for various things. Now, whether or not we want to be given this money or not, I think is going to be dependent on our relative attitude towards them. So, just saying, in the realm of a global conversation, think about it. You know, it's a way to maybe fulfill the promises that people have been made. You know, maybe we'd actually be able to afford it. Now, just saying, before we go there. Now, and then the other thing on the subject of doability. Are we just trying to put our finger in the dike of the second round here in Palm Beach County where it's all just going to blow out? You know, there's many times, if you look at Google Earth, you can see we're the only spot left until you get to Sugar. And that's what's going to happen. We're the thing that's going to be for the next 20 years is all around us. Is that going to be what we spend our money and our time on, is fighting the possibly inevitable? Because when we say to people, oh my God, do you see? shopping centers, multifamily housing, and the tight lots and all this. We look at it one way, and we see a negative connotation to that. But the majority of the people in Palm Beach County live in that. They like it, that's why they came here. So they don't see life the way we do. So, not to be Don Quixote, we don't want to sit here and just, fight against what we can't do. Though I definitely agree that we need to work with whomever we need to work with to make sure that Chevy stays what it is and not become Southern Boulevard. Because somebody who's been there for 21 years and can only turn right and come out and can't turn left and all this stuff, that really gets to be a bad deal. And it's a good thing I don't go to Wellington very often, because going across Southern Boulevard to get to Wellington is near impossible. So, I think we need to be circumspect and not just run off and do it, but we definitely need to voice our complaints and our concerns, but we're up against a huge amount of money in Minto and in the Highlands Dunes thing. Money that these people waste more than we have.
And I'm in agreement with you, Tom, but at the same time, I think it's very important. Kind of reminds me of the story of the where Jerry Clower used to tell a story of the 3 bulls that were in the pasture, and the one senior bull says, I hear there's a new bull coming. Well, I mean to tell this new fellow that of this herd of 60 cows, that 40 of them are mine, and he just better not, And the second bull says, well, I might be just number 2, but of those remaining 20, 15 of them are mine. And the third one is the youngest little bull, and he says, I don't have much to say, but I'm with you guys. I'm, here to tell you that those other 5 cows, I'm laying claim to. Well, they said the truck pulled up and the tailgate dropped down, and the meanest, nastiest looking Bramer bulls pulled out of that trailer just snorting and pawing. And the first cow says, well, maybe we can negotiate with this guy. And the second bull says, you know what? I think maybe you're right. Maybe we just need to share. And that young bull started pawing the ground and snorting and looking like he was ready for a fight. And the 2 bulls says, what in the world is getting into you? He says, I just want him to know I'm a bull. And sometimes the key is that we have got to go against them. I don't think we're going to have to spend a lot of money, but I think we need to get as many people as we can, because, and I agree, I think this Highland Dunes is a red herring. Mike has done a great job showing that this was based on faulty information. The whole thing, where it was approved back in '04, was based on the central western, or the community sector plan that's been thrown out. It was based on a 900,000 square foot employment center that was supposed to go in. It was based on scripts coming in. It was based on some faulty stuff. And therefore, we might not win, but we got to let them know that we're not a cow. We're a bull. So we're going to fight it, and we're going to go in there and try to get the density dropped, because every one of the others are looking at it. And it's much like when Calorie Judge put their thing in at first. They put a lot of planning in it, and it looked pretty good. The problem was Calorie Judge never did scare me as much with their 10,000 homes as all of Royal Palm Cultivation is looking at them, saying if they get 10,000, by golly, I'm not getting 7,000 homes anymore. I'm going for 25,000. And the rest of them will jump in line so flippin' fast. So that means every time we have a chance to speak against it and make their life miserable, we have a neighbor to the north of us, Martin County, and they've made it so rough on developers that they have jumped Martin County and gone to St. Lucie. That's really the hole in the donut. You look at that in Google Earth, and they don't even deal with them anymore. So my thought is, I agree, I don't think we need the traffic studies. I'm not ready to jump through hoops. I would like to have Mike go down there and read the letter that he sent to them, basically why he thinks from a legal standpoint they really should not be approved, and it helps having a professional speak in that way rather than one of us. I've asked Mark to go to the League of Cities tomorrow. They're having a meeting, and try to get a letter from the League of Cities supporting us against Highland Dunes. Whether we can or not, but we're going to try, because everything we can get is going to help our issue, and at least we want the developer to know that he was in a fight. So that's my thought. But anyway, anybody else? Jim?
Mr. Mayor, no, I agree with you. We definitely need to remind them that we are not a cow. And I think from a budgetary standpoint, we've got Mike's budget in there. I don't think we need to carve anything out additional. The concern I also have was what I read, and I don't know if this is true, but when you read something in the paper, you don't know, that the county commission in the original approval required access on, north access on the Trojan. Again, that, to me, that's one of the key items besides the density that we need to turn off. They need to do everything south. Of course, I don't know if the plan was to have southern widen at that time as to when it's going to be widened. But traffic flow, as we've always talked about, is we like to steer it to southern. So I'd like to, I don't know what we can say about the northern access, but if the council, the county commissioners have said, I'd like to ask them to reconsider that, and I don't know if I can put anything together included in his presentation, but that is a concern. That is a concern. If we can turn that off, then I think that's part of the battle, because it's then out of their way to come back up Seminole Pratt to come over the children if they haven't gone so. And that's, I think, is important to us. And the only thing I don't have now, Mark, from your kind of the presentation of the issue, suggested that staff feels that maybe we need more things to be brought, like traffic, or you're just saying that all those things are normally considered, do you want to consider them? I'm trying to understand your position, your opinion.
What I was asking the council is, sure, we can take care of Mike under the line item deal with the county attorney. But what Mike had requested was that if he needed any assistance, that he could go to it. That's why, and Jim did provide some assistance to him. At one point, Mike was considering using our traffic consultant for additional information. Now I'm asking council is, if that's the case, and Mike thinks he's going to need additional help, I want you to take that vote and allocate those resources so we can go ahead and do that.
But that's not the question. That's not the concern.
What's our council say?
I think based on the discussion I've heard this evening, as the mayor suggested, reading the letter, and I think you're setting the tone, and with all due respect, calling in these other experts and the like, I don't think you're going to be able to change the course of that river. At this late day, you've done the research, you're in the best place you're going to be. You're going to be most effective with that presentation. Right?
Okay. Now, as kind of an aside related to that, if Mike wants some help, or if Mike thinks he needs somebody to refer to him, give him, or if he calls on you to help, then I think that would fall under our desire to have Mike be the point person, and whatever support he needs, we would support that. Do we need a number to do that, or we have enough line items? We say whatever we get incurred, any charges we incur, let's put them on the budget where we have dollars for the various items, and then we can come back later on and discuss whether there's a lot there, we need to consider some budget change, but not tonight. We need any budgetary. But I would say as a council, let's give Mike a free hand as to what he thinks he needs to do, because we want him to present. That sounds fair.
Mike has been staying in contact with me, and basically we talked about those things. One of the good parts about it when we face Minto is all we're going to have to do is basically use what the county already did in denying the 10,000 homes before and limiting them to the 2995. Nothing's changed. So, that's going to be to our advantage that way. We're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. We're not going to have to go out there and do these traffic studies. We thought maybe we needed it, but I don't know if we are. Ron?
I'm in agreement with DJ and you. You got the letter from Mike. He shouldn't need any more information. If you can't pull it off with what you've got, with people's support, with council support, then the county's not going to care about engineers and other stuff. So no cut and dry. Mike comes with his letter. He can express it better than you can. And we give it our best shot.
My point was that if Mike thinks he wants something,
Sure. No,
we don't want to tie his hands.
And he's fine.
We don't want to
He's
tie
fine
his
so
hands,
far.
because he's the guy that we're asking to do the presentation.
Yeah.
And if he's already got it, he's got it. But if he wants more, I would and leave it, discussion with you, Mr. Mayor. We say leave it with the mayor to approve.
Right.
And I'm ready to, make that motion that we authorize Mike to be, speaking on behalf. And the mayor can authorize any additional expenses that he needs for that presentation. And that's one motion.
Yeah, okay.
Can we make that, I'll make that motion.
We're not, this is a meeting, all right, so we can't. So we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it with exactly that. In other words, the final approval will go through you, and that way I can hold you accountable if you bring it.
You got it. All right, any further discussion? I've got, Bill out.
Okay, I've been Bill Lottie Road, I've been working on this Highland Dunes thing since Jess pulled it. Since you started with a story, and I heard about the money from Minto tonight, I'll start with a story. Ran into a really good-looking girl, asked her if she'd get in bed with me for $1 million. She said, yeah. I said, well, about $10. She said, what do you think I am? I said, well, we know what you are, we're haggling over the price.
That's right.
Okay. Anyway, a couple of things. Okeechobee. Minto is going to force Okeechobee through because we got to get around the school, Okeechobee to Cheatham Hill. Okay. What I've been pushing for Highland Dunes, and I've contacted all my colleagues at the USGS, Department of the Interior, Army Corps of Engineers, Everglades National Park, Audubon, Sierra Everglades Foundation, with the idea of Highland Dunes and Villa Arizo becoming stormwater treatment area 1 north. Now, there's some other stuff going on in the state that might not make this sound as stupid as it sounds on get-go. Water's going out of Lake Okeechobee to Lusahaki, St. Lucie estuaries and Indian River. Lagoon are killing those estuaries. They're working for ways to get water south. The Central Everglades Planning Project is taking some of it. Some of it's going to come down LA, C10 and C12 into C51. C51 goes into Lake Worth. Lake Worth is a huge economic driver for Palm Beach County. Okay, so things, and it's a perfect place to put a clean thing because LA Reservoir doesn't clean water, it's too deep. It stores water. Okay. Filter margin should be about 3 feet deep at the most to let sunlight get down there. That's one aspect of it. Okay, Minto, a couple other things to think about. Minto is going to, well, first off, I did the math of the periphery. Supposedly a development like that's supposed to get the density of the mean surrounding it. Okay, I did the math on that. It comes out there allowed 2,303 homes, dwelling units. And Jess Santa Maria, the commissioner, and I have talked about this in years past, is that the county has got to get to the point where if you've got a certain amount of acreage and you're getting 1 unit per acre, okay, whatever, just for that example, you've got 100 acres and you're using 10 acres of that for offices, grocery store, whatever, you don't get to move those 10 units anywhere else, they die. Okay, so we got to push for that as well. The other thing for Minto to think about is you road 140th. And then to tell acreage, okay, it's off, we've killed it once. 40th Street going over to Royal Palm Beach, we're going to tell them that that's going to come back on the block. Okay? 60th going all the way to State Road 7. All of these things are going to fall in, because this is an absolute ludicrous plan that Minto came for. I don't even see how somebody in their mind would draw this thing up. It's absolutely ridiculous. So tell a friends, get there Thursday morning, get there the 28th. Call anybody you want. If they can't show up, have them write a letter, give them to you, email, turn it in. Just, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with buffalo chips.
And the letters do work. When we met with the county commissioners, it was amazing. Our first question was, how did it get on the consent agenda? And they said we had not received 1 letter.
Who knew?
Against it. Who knew? I agree, Bill. But at the same time, You know, so if you can't be there, write a letter, send an email, do that. All right. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, we've got your steering the Highland Dunes discussion, and Mike says, Mike, do we want to have anybody go to the 28th? That's, they're not asking specifically for whom, but they're asking for the process. Do we want to speak then, at least let the committee?
I'll be there the 28th. So
We ought
I think we
to
need
start
to
them knowing that there's
Right.
something, again, there's a bull out there.
I think we'll save you. And that's my thought. You want to do it any differently, but I'll go the 28th.
Well, I don't know if
That
there's
should be, I don't think they're going to talk about density or anything.
I don't know if there's anything that we want to do in terms of bring Mike there. I don't mind using the club if we think that's, the old adage, I don't mind bringing a gun to a knife fight.
Definitely.
So if we want to get Mike there again, and just kind of a first time out, out of the box to raise whatever, I think we ought to do that.
All right, we have a motion to bring Mike to the meeting Thursday in a second. So let's vote on that. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right, you want to bring something up on the 28th?
Well, I'm asking if we think it's something we want to have there again, but it won't be, maybe as specific to some of the things, but if he thinks that it's value for him to kind of set the tone, if there is another, we will be back, but we're here now today because you're discussing this issue. And I'm kind of looking for my guidance here, because there's a powerful individual here and experience there that, we can certainly draw on. But I'll tell you, last week, when Jess had his monthly, there was a lot of conversation about Highland and Minto as well, but Minto was not as on the cusp kind of thing. We're not ready. But Highland Beach, you've got folks out there that, referring back to Isaac and the water that flowed into their yards, and this is another source of flow into them. And the conversation was kind of interesting in terms of the process, but there's a lot of folks that were talking about these upcoming projects, and I think you said there's a lot of support out there. And there's a lot of concerns from the water perspective. And one of the things that was raised was the county commission grants approval, and then the South Florida Water Management is later in the loop, later involved. And the concern was, and Jess had mentioned, he thought the process should be a combined effort of all parties that needed to approve at one time, and then you kind of come and you get either the approval or not. But it's not like kicking them off one at a time. And it seemed to lessen the power of the South Florida Water Management to say anything once the commission has approved something. And I didn't get a real comfortable feeling that they were concerned or held a concern that the water concerns are something they wanted to fight for. And that was disturbing.
Right.
Disturbing.
One of the things tonight, though, is they're making contact with South Florida Water Management to make sure they're there Thursday.
Well, one thing you need to remember about South Florida Water Management is the entire mess that we have in South Florida was permitted by them.
Sure.
And besides that, the other part is that they are like this with the gentleman who owns Highland Steel, because they bought the hole that he made in the ground, and they're about to buy another hole in the ground. And if Bill's plan goes through, they'll buy the big pile of sand he has left from when he was done digging the hole. So, and then where all that sand's gonna go, I don't know, but, they're offering a 50,000 square foot government center to somebody as bribery, so they know how to play the game. They're very well connected, so
They're good.
I do like Bill's idea, but it's a lot of sand to move.
Excuse me for breaking Robert's rules, Rich. Two quick things. One, Highland Dunes went off of their tax in 2009. They've been paying that since 2009.
They have pine trees built in.
Yeah, I know, the timber industry, right, Catucas. And the other one is, when you talk about Minto, the process should stop. That's a DRI, period. And the DRI, the Development of Regional Impact, the region I'm talking about, southeast United States up to Atlanta.
To answer yours, Jim, I think they're all going to be there watching what happens. They know that it's going to happen again at Minto. So my thought right now is we won't need right to that, the Minto one.
bring it up because tonight's our last chance really on.
You're right.
And we'll get him, I would guess that he'll play a role at some point when we down the process. But, I didn't know if it was good to make the point that we're here on mental also, we'll be back and make it that way. So I would like to see it said on.
Well, I'll tell you what we got. You authorized me to be able to do something at the last minute. If something comes up and I see that, wow, it's going to be beneficial to have Mike there, I'll let Mark know
I'll make a motion that we allow the mayor to make a decision on the 28th involving Mike and getting him to participate.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion?
I thought Mike was allowed to go to meetings. I didn't know he had to be authorized by us to do it. Regardless of what we do.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, motion passes. All right. Comments by the public? And we'll take it in other order. By the council? Tom?
We're 8 minutes past our goal.
I know.
Good night, and thanks to those for coming.
Okay, Ron?
I'm a winner. Thanks, thank everybody for coming and hanging in there.
Okay, Jim?
Western Community Council met. We did not have a quorum, but we had discussions on a number of items. One of the things that came up was that Chamber had come to the meeting as a public meeting, a public addressing section, and their comment was that evidently the extension of 441 is under attack again, continually. But they're doing it in the back room of federal government, Fish and Wildlife Department has held up the project. And the Western Community Council, again, we have a quorum, but the representatives there, and Wellington was there, because they're the big pocketbook guys, had mentioned that maybe we need, as a group of cities and towns, to support a lobbyist, because that's what we're fighting again. There's a lobbyist up there going, presenting the minority position, not my backyard, don't put this in my backyard, from our friends on North Lake. And we may need to support that. I don't know if anything will get too far along, but the individual towns were going to bring it up and may ask the rest of us to pony up something. And I think it's tremendously important also to us, as I think everybody in the surrounding area was very supportive and did what we could in terms of making it known. But if we have to come up with some money to hire a lobbyist, then I want to bring it to the council and ask that we be prepared to discuss it at November 5th. I'll stay in contact with Wellington because they have another meeting to see if they've done anything further. One of the conversations, one of the items talked about was they have a lobbyist normally they use, but it's not somebody that works within the federal government area. And we probably need somebody that has an expertise in that. I think the council would be interested in supporting a project like that, but
We want them to make the lead,
no, yeah, but maybe I'll let Mark know if there's anything to be discussed for the November 5th meeting based on individual town discussions. Otherwise, thanks everybody for coming. Certainly the few that stayed are really tough.
Thank you, Jim. DJ, anything?
Yes, sir. Just thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, and as you know, I'm assisting Mike with the transfer of the roads, and the discussion tonight was very insightful, and will assist us going forward.
Good deal. The only thing, Mark, in the future, let's make sure that on our agenda, we've got a slot for like when the guys come back and report to the different committees, that we have that just in, whether under committee reports or something, so that, whoever's representing us on the, the town, where Tom was or Jim was, that we get that report during the meeting and everybody else can hear it. So anyway, thank you all for coming, and everybody that can't get out there Thursday.
One thing to show up Thursday, get up and talk, don't just turn in a I oppose it thing. Even if you get up and say, I'm so-and-so, I oppose it, that carries a lot more weight than turning in a little piece of paper.